December 19th, 1944. The frozen Belgian countryside trembled beneath the roar of German engines. Columns of panzers, steel monsters of the Wehrmacht, rolled west, tearing through the American lines like an avalanche of iron. Entire battalions vanished in minutes, command posts overrun, ammunition dumps captured. Hitler's last great gamble, the Battle of the Bulge, was in full fury. For 3 days, the offensive had gone exactly as planned. The German 2nd Panzer Division, battle-hardened veterans from France, Russia, and North Africa, was racing toward the Meuse River. If they reached those bridges, the Allies would be split in half, and the war in Europe might drag on for years. But standing in their way, at a lonely crossroads near the village of Foy-Notre-Dame, was a single Sherman tank, Colorado Kid. It was crippled, its track blown off, its main gun damaged, its radio dead. And yet, for 6 hours, that one broken tank and its 4-man crew would halt an entire German Panzer Division. 3 days earlier, Hitler had unleashed 200,000 troops and 600 tanks through the Ardennes forest. The Allies never saw it coming. Low clouds grounded their planes. Roads jammed with retreating soldiers and civilians. Chaos reigned. American units were scattered thinly across 80 miles of dense forest. Most were resting, refitting, or green replacements. No one expected an attack of this scale. By the morning of December 19th, the 2nd Panzer Division had advanced 30 miles into Allied territory. Their next objective? The bridges at Dinant. One more day of rapid progress and they'd be across the Meuse. But they needed that crossroads first. Inside the battered Sherman sat 4 Americans. Staff Sergeant William McUarter, 24, tank commander from Denver. Corporal James Rothwell, 22, gunner from Ohio. Private First Class Tony Caserta, 19, loader from Brooklyn. Private Eugene Dio, 20, driver from Pennsylvania. They were exhausted, cold, and running on black coffee and nerves. Their orders were simple: hold the road as long as possible, then fall back before being overrun. McUarter positioned his Sherman behind a low stone wall overlooking the frozen fields. It wasn't much of a defense, but it would have to do. They knew the Germans were coming. They just didn't know how many. At 2:30 p.m., McUarter spotted the first German scouts, motorcycles with sidecars, moving fast along the eastern road. He held fire. Too far. 15 minutes later, the horizon darkened. The column appeared, Panzer IVs in front, then Panthers, half-tracks filled with grenadiers, more tanks behind them. 16, 20, he stopped counting. This wasn't a probing attack. It was the main thrust of the division. A Panzer IV halted, turret turning, a muzzle flash. The shell screamed overhead, missing by yards. Rothwell returned fire. The Sherman's 75mm gun thundered, striking the Panzer's front plate and punching clean through. Flames burst from its engine deck. First kill. The column froze. Standard German doctrine, lead tank destroyed, meant possible ambush. They fanned out, scanning for multiple American positions. There was only one. Another Panzer tried to bypass the road and got bogged in a frozen ditch. Rothwell put a round through its turret ring. Second kill. The road ahead was blocked by burning wrecks. The German advance ground to a halt. Then came the Panthers, the most feared tanks in Europe. One of them rumbled forward, its 75mm high-velocity gun easily capable of punching through a Sherman like paper. McUarter knew his armor wouldn't survive a head-on duel. He waited, heart pounding, as the Panther advanced. The German fired first. The round slammed into the Sherman's frontal plate and ricocheted skyward, the impact deafening inside the tank. Systems flickered, the radio died. When the Panther angled slightly to reposition, it exposed its thinner side armor for just a second. "Now!" McUarter shouted. Rothwell fired. The shell struck true. The Panther exploded, its turret hurled into the air. Third kill. 3 burning tanks now blocked the narrow road. The division's spearhead was paralyzed, but inside Colorado Kid, things were falling apart. The near miss had damaged the gun's hydraulics. They had to turn the turret by hand. Worse, Caserta discovered the right track was severed. The tank couldn't move. They were immobilized. Doctrine was clear. If your tank is disabled, you abandon it. Save the crew, not the machine. But the crossroads wasn't just a position, it was the position. If the Germans broke through here, the Meuse bridges would fall. McUarter gathered his men, told them the truth. They could leave now and live, or stay and die buying time for others. He gave them the choice. No one moved. Rothwell spoke quietly. We stay. 4 men, 1 crippled tank, an entire division closing in. At 4 p.m., the Germans attacked again, this time with infantry. Panzer grenadiers fanned out across the fields, supported by half-tracks and covering fire from the remaining tanks. Caserta and Dio raked the advancing soldiers with machine gun bursts, while Rothwell targeted half-tracks before they could unload. Snow erupted around them from high explosive shells. The concussions shook the Sherman, deafening the crew. But they held. Another Panzer IV tried to suppress their fire. Rothwell put a shell straight through its turret. 4th kill. The German commander was furious. A single Sherman was holding up a 10-mile column. Headquarters demanded progress. Time was running out. He called in the 80s, anti-aircraft guns now turned anti-tank, capable of shredding armor from 2 kilometers away. McUarter watched the flak guns set up in the distance. He knew what was coming. The first salvo landed short, throwing snow and debris. The second obliterated half the stone wall. The third struck the turret directly, but didn't explode. A dud. A single defective shell, sabotaged by forced laborers in a munitions plant, had just saved 4 American lives. But the impact crippled their gun breech. They had 1 shot left before it jammed permanently. After that, Colorado Kid would be nothing but a pillbox with machine guns. At 5:30 p.m., the snow stopped. The Germans advanced again. 5 Panthers abreast, infantry behind, artillery ready. There was no subtlety this time. They would crush whatever stood before them. McUarter steadied his voice. Hold fire until I give the word. They had 1 shot. It had to count. The Panthers closed. 400 yards, 300, 250. Then the world erupted. Artillery, American artillery, rained down on the German line. Massive shells tore into the field, annihilating tanks and scattering infantry. 1 Panther's turret flew skyward. Another lost its track and spun uselessly. The advance disintegrated. McUarter didn't hesitate. Fire! Rothwell squeezed the trigger. The gun roared, its final breath. The shell struck the nearest Panther square in the hull. Flames engulfed it. 5th kill. The German attack collapsed. Survivors fled back down the road. The crossroads was silent once more. 20 minutes later, American voices called out through the smoke. Tank destroyers from the 75th Battalion had arrived, guided by intercepted radio chatter. Their forward observer had called in that life-saving artillery barrage. They expected to find a German breakthrough. Instead, they found a single Sherman, surrounded by burning panzers. When the commander asked how long they'd been holding, McUarter checked his watch. 5.5 hours. All 4 men survived. Burned, deafened, shaken, but alive. They were evacuated to a field hospital. Caserta carried shrapnel scars. Dio never fully recovered his hearing. Rothwell's hands were blistered raw. Their tank was beyond repair, stripped for parts, but its legend spread quickly. The Sherman that stopped a Panzer Division. Intelligence officers confirmed 5 confirmed kills, 6 hours of delay, 1 Panzer Division thrown off schedule. That delay gave Allied reinforcements the time they needed to secure the Meuse crossings. The German offensive, once unstoppable, was now faltering. McUarter received the Distinguished Service Cross. Rothwell, Caserta, and Dio earned Silver Stars. When General Patton pinned the medal to McUarter's chest, he asked, "What made you stay?" McUarter hesitated, then said, "Someone had to hold that position. We were there, so we stayed." Patton nodded. "That's the right answer, Sergeant." Always the right answer, Colorado Kid never fought again. But its story became legend among tank crews, a reminder that courage and position can outweigh numbers and firepower. After the war, the men went home. McUarter returned to Colorado, married, raised 3 children. Rothwell became a teacher. Caserta and Dio stayed in touch, meeting once a year to share a drink and remember. They all lived quiet lives. None called themselves heroes. But every December 19th, they remembered that crossroads, the smoke, the snow, the impossible choice that became their finest hour. Years later, historians uncovered German records describing the fight. Heavy American resistance, multiple tanks, strong defenses. In truth, it had been 1 immobilized Sherman and 4 men who refused to quit. When asked again, decades later, why he hadn't retreated, McUarter said simply, "If we left, the Germans would have broken through. Somebody had to pay the price to stop them. It might as well be us." The crossroads near Foy-Notre-Dame is quiet now, just farmland, rebuilt stone walls, and narrow roads winding through the fields. There's no monument, no plaque. But for 6 hours in December 1944, it was the hinge of history. Proof that courage isn't about fearlessness, but about staying when every instinct says to run. 4 men, 1 broken tank, 5 destroyed panzers, 1 division stopped. That's what courage looks like. That's what changed the Battle of the Bulge.